Hello and welcome to Mandibil. Welcome back to my multi-part deconstruction of Keith Frankish's lecture series on illusionism. And last time we were sort of I left off 10 minutes into lecture 4. And I basically, I'm just going to carry on from there so we can get going. So let's see what he can say about denying experience.
Shone through. So they thought of stars as holes. People have had all kinds of conceptions of the natural world. Take vision, for example. Some people used to think that vision, in the ancient world, it was fairly common to think that vision involved rays projecting from our eyes and hitting the things that we see. The emission theory of vision. That's quite a common view in the ancient world. Or think about something like mental illness, about the way mental illness was.
So if that was incorrect, what is going on now? So what is the main difference between, I'm not saying the either or, right? But it's like, if you have a theory now that haven't been refuted yet because it hasn't been refuted yet, right? But older theories weren't refuted until they were refuted. So before the refutation, this is what people believed in. And we are sort of, or anyone is still in the same situation always, that it hasn't been refuted yet. So, but it doesn't mean it's correct just because it hasn't been refuted yet. All you can say is it haven't been refuted yet. But that's one thing, that's sort of a fundamental part of science, in my opinion, right? But he is, so if it rays are not going out from the eyes, which I don't have any reason to believe either, then what is really going on then, which he thinks is correct? He doesn't illuminate you on that other than what he has previously mentioned, which would be light bouncing and arriving through, for instance, the eyes, right? But then he is basically saying that if there is something out there with which this light is bouncing from, then that which you are experiencing isn't that which it is bouncing from, right? First of all, it is not the thing itself because it's a bouncing light, not the thing that is being bounced from, right? The thing is not coded into the light or anything like that you then decode when it's in your mind because you know what it's supposed to be, right? A code is something that you're supposed, it's a sort of a placeholder for something else. A one-to-one placeholder, right? Then so when this code arrives, I know that it should be represented by this instead. How would you have that insight? Well, you don't. Because if reflections is what you are receiving, then all you have ever received are reflections of whatever might be out there, right? So if you're saying that is out there, no, then you're referring to that internal representation created from the bouncing light, not from the thing itself, right? And this seems to be fairly impossible for most people as far as I can, from my own experience and my deconstructions and listening to other people defending their their philosophy and so metaphysics and so on, right? This paradox, this contradiction, or whatever you want to call it, is usually not identified, right? It's naive realism to believe that which you're experiencing is the actual thing out there, right? That's naive realism. And that's what most people suffer from, it seems to me, right? Also what Keith Frankish suffers from, obviously, right? He sees a part of the problem or part of the thing But he doesn't go any further. He doesn't realize that things don't hang together in this kind of explanation. I'm not saying I have the explanation necessarily, but at least I can point out this doesn't hang together, right? So, okay, let's keep going.
Was explained in the past. Many more examples. I think what fire is, what the elements are.
No, science doesn't correct our everyday conceptions of things. We have to decide on something. Science can only say it's not this, right? It might be this, but we haven't disproven it yet, right? So it's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to trust that this theory that hasn't been refuted yet actually describes whatever you want to be described in the future, right? It doesn't correct anything. It merely says, no, that part you're believing there, that doesn't fit with our experiential, our scientific experiments that are based on empiricism, right? If that was the case, that which you believe in, then this should occur and that should occur and so on. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So your theory about how things work seems to be incoherent or fallacious or badly argued, or, you have to come up with something different, right? But then you come up with something different. Then that has to be refuted. Well, it doesn't have to be refuted. But basically, you're trying to explain something that you do not know what is, right? Who knows what gravity is? Nobody knows what the fuck gravity is. But there's sort of a theory that tries to describe that if this is the case and that is the case, and you have so much of this and so much of that, then this is how it's going to be composed after such and such amount of time, right? In the future. So these kind of scientific crystal balls are just stories, basically, generalized stories of how things will unfurl that haven't been refuted yet, that haven't been pointed out any flaws in it, right? So they're functional in the sense that they haven't been refuted yet. Now, this is a very important thing to keep in mind about science. Science doesn't explain anything. Science doesn't fucking explain anything, right? Science doesn't explain it. It predicts how things will unfurl, and you can quantify stuff in reality based on comparing it, right? If you have one stick over here and you have an elephant over here, you can measure how many sticks, the distance from head to tail this elephant is. But you're not explaining elephant by taking a stick and comparing it to the elephant, right? The quantification is a comparison between, is a relative, so many of these sticks matches the length of elephant, right? But it doesn't explain neither the stick or the elephant, right?
What lightning is. Endless examples. And science has corrected these conceptions and is continually correcting them.
No, just because you come up with a better theory is not necessarily, it's sort of a battle of words now, right? It's sort of semantics. What do you actually mean when we're talking about various stuff here, right? And okay, I could, be sensitive to that, right? Don't have to, fly fuck every word here, right? That would be, though I very much do like to have good definitions of the terms being used in philosophy, right? Or at least it should be definition should be close to the introduction of that particular word. Or the word follows from what is just previously described as, okay, and that which I just described, I will use this term for it, right? So we have an understanding where we're going. Just bringing in terms left and right, as Keith Frankish also does, that doesn't bode well for good philosophy, in my opinion, right? So see it as potentially manipulative, right? But you are using your qualia when you're doing science, man, right? Where is your fucking brain? Aren't you using your brain when you're doing science? Well, what do you need your brain for, right? You need your brain to analyze the qualia in order to, cognize and conceptualize and so on from the qualia, from the sounds, from the tastes, from the whatever, right? It's like you're not talking about that which you're trying to argue. You're arguing over here and sort of pretending that you're arguing about that core subject that you're trying to refute, but you're not, right? It's like when I'm sitting here, I'm arguing that qualia is an illusion, and then I'll go over here and argue for something that sounds like it's the same, but it isn't. And then I'm going to use my qualia in order to argue against it, right? It's like, man, oh, god damn, man. That he can't even see he's doing this, right? That's very bad, right? I mean, please, somebody who's another illusionist somewhere, please explain to me how this works, because this guy can't do it, right? It's completely ridiculous. The way he argues, it's he's having his cake and eating it too, right? It's a circular argument, invalid argument, and so it is fallacious. He can't argue that he can argue this way, but it's not a functional argument. He's standing in the bucket and trying to lift himself up, right? Or he's sort of lifting him up with a bucket that he says is an illusion. I mean, come on, man, right? I'm not buying this shit.
But we don't think of this as denying the existence of the things in question. When scientists rejected the geocentric view of the cosmos with the Earth at the center and replaced it with a heliocentric model, they didn't think of that as denying that the sun and the Earth existed. When they realized that the stars were actually not holes in a sphere rotating around the Earth, but actually massive.
Well, it was a theory. It was only until it was refuted by observation that it can't be this, right? But it's very much a part of apparently human DNA to wanting to explain stuff, right? And my personal opinion is it's because of children, right? When parents, in order to get the children to be like they want them to be, the parents have to be seen by the children as authorities, right? And that's why most, when the children grow up and become teenagers, they suddenly realize that their stupid parents don't know shit about fuck, right? That's why they sort of reject their parents as stupid idiots, right? But they manage to convince the poor children that they actually were some kind of authority, right? And then they'll use all sorts of sophist tricks and taking away their Friday candy, or they're not going to get this if they don't do this. These kind of arguments, right? That's how the idea of an authority arrives in the human's understanding of the world, in my opinion, is because there are parents, right? And parents need their children to comply with whatever bullshit is going on in the tribe, right? It's more important that you toe the line, that you start to think for yourself. What kind of parent would want their children to think for themselves, because they are inevitably going to find out that all of it is built on bullshit, right? So, in order for the children not to ask any questions, the parents need to have an answer for everything, right? And that's why religion and all sorts of stories about the creation or whatever, they come in handy for parents to shut their children the fuck up, right? So these stories are not trying to explain the world. They're trying to avoid parents from looking like stupid idiots who have to say, I don't know, all the time, right? And if the parents need to order their children around at the same time as they're always saying, I don't know, then the children are going to say, but if you don't know, how can you order me around? So they need to have a pretense of knowledge and insight and complete understanding in order for their children to obey them, right? That's why there are all these stories, in my opinion. Because they come in handy for parents to say, hey, it's because God. And it's because that ostrich laid an egg on the crocodile. That's why there are you, whatever, right?
They have nuclear fireballs, billions upon billions.
Or I might add that all these stories, it's always something going on down below earth or beyond the heavens or beyond the clouds. It's always something that the children can't go check. It's not like, yes, I have a divine intervention from that guy over there. No, I had an angel coming from somewhere that you can't go check, right? You can never go and check those weird stories, right? You just have to trust the parents.
Of miles away, they didn't. We didn't think of this as denying the existence of stars. Rather, we thought of it as telling us what stars really were. Similarly with vision, when the emission theory was rejected, people didn't conclude that people don't really see. They concluded that seeing was something different from what they thought it was, and with mental illness and so on and so forth. What matters is that there's a continuity in how we apply the concepts. So we both we today and the ancient astronomers can agree that how we identify stars, they're those things that are shining up there in the sky. And that hasn't changed. We both pick out stars in the same way, initially at least by observing them. Similarly with vision, we know when people are seeing things, we can point to someone and say, he's seeing.
What do you mean applying concepts? What matters is that there is continuity in how we. But just because there's continuity in Christianity, right? It's been there for 2,000 years or something like that. But that doesn't explain anything. That doesn't validate anything. That is continuity or continuous, right? It's not enough just to say it's continuous, right? Yeah, if it's all over the place, it might indicate that there's something wrong. But just because it's not all over the place doesn't validate it as such. And apply concepts. What do you mean? Am I applying concepts? Right? I'm not applying concepts. If I go out and it's dark and I experience light in what you call the sky, well, I am not applying anything, right? It arrives basically on its own accord, right? If there isn't an arrival of any kind, right? I have that experience. I have that qualia. I have this, whatever, weird experience, right? I'm not applying anything. This kind of, you are being this kind of, I am controlling and mapping out my picture in order to apply concepts to this. And that is what we do when we are human. We apply this and that and the other, right? And because we have applied this, we don't need the qualia anymore, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
Being that, I am seeing that, what's involved. So the change in the conception of the thing didn't involve changing what we're actually referring to, the phenomenon we're actually picking out. We can change our conception of something without changing what it is we're talking about. So the revision in our conception of the
what does he mean by conception then? I'm confused. I mean, if I experience a star, I don't have to report star in order to have a concept star. The concept is put on the experience by the mind itself without me doing any kind of application, right? And I don't have to report it. It's not like I can't have an idea of the concept of star unless I make the sound star. That's ridiculous, right? Sitting alone on a deserted island, I can have all the conceptualization of stars that I want, right? Maybe even more than I want. So it's it's sort of I don't like this kind of half-ass argumentation, right? It's sort of polemic. It's just word manipulation, right? That doesn't seem to be a strict, coherent argument in there. It's just, yeah, and this points in the direction, right? And this also points in the direction. Now I find 17 things that points in the direction because I've juggled the words here, right? And therefore, it's sort of likely that I have something to... That's not what I would call philosophy, right? If philosophy has to be fucking sharp as a, Japanese kitchen knife, right? When it's fluffy, but it can't be fluffy all over, right? There has to be sharp delineations where you say this is the case or not the case, right? Can't be this, and it sounds like all the way through, right? Which is possibly why it's such a long-winded lecture series of 10 hours or whatever. Because it's all so fluffy. Because there isn't I would rather have one strict, crystal clear argument about this, rather than 17 or 50 fluffy ones sort of making because I've made so many fluffy arguments, it can sort of coalesce into one big sharp argument. That doesn't work, right? It's not... it's like if you're a stamp collector, 1,000 stamps at the value of £1 is not equally valuable to a one stamp that is worth £1,000, right? It's just sort of the accumulation of value isn't linear, you could say, right? It's sort of a diminishing return or something like that, right? It's if you have one sofa, it's a value of one sofa, right? If you have two sofas, right, it could be a value of twice that, right? But if you have 10 sofas, it loses its value because you can't, it doesn't add up, right? The functionality doesn't add up linearly. You can't just add crappy arguments into becoming all of a sudden at some point a tip over point, or where it becomes a good argument, right? So a lot of bad arguments never becomes a good argument, in my opinion, right? Maybe that sofa analogy wasn't too good, but I'm trying my best, right? Okay, let's...
The thing didn't involve denying that the thing existed and introducing something completely different in its place. We continued to refer to the same thing, the same phenomenon. But
now he talks about it existing. And he mentioned also that, I forgot that, we don't think of this as denying the existence of the things in question. No, but the thing is not the qualia. I missed that one, right? That's important. He hasn't defined what he means by existence, right? And thing, what's a thing? What do you mean by a thing? Right? The taste of chocolate is not a thing. The chocolate is a thing. But in order for you to have any idea of chocolate, you need the color, and you need the sound, and you need the taste, and you need the feel, right? These are the qualia of that object. If there is no qualia, there is no object, right? There might be an object, but you don't care or you don't know because you have no qualia to point you in the direction that there actually is an object. And even if you have the qualia and you objectify whatever, a bar of chocolate, does that mean that there must be a bar of chocolate? Sometimes you objectify things to find out you are actually miscognize, what's it called? You cognize something that actually wasn't there. I have an experience I have often referred to. in earlier podcasts, even way back when I was only doing it Danish, right? That I was riding in my car on the highway, or the free, what is it called, motorway, and it's sort of there was a bit of traffic jam and so on, right? So it was slow traffic, and I was behind this car, and I was sort of just minding my own business, just staring sort of blindly, sort of what's it called? Staring, just like that you sit there, you're awake, but you're on sort of a low energy level, right? Only what is necessary to drive the car and get along, right? And I was just experiencing that mirror in the back of that car, as if they had just been in a furniture store and just put that sort of fairly large mirror in on the back seat of that car. So when I looked through the sort of back window of that car, there was sort of a mirror, right? That's what I experienced. And then at some point, like a minute later, or I was not sort of focusing, wow, mirror, and staring down that mirror. I was just looking somewhere else, and then looking at that car again, and all of a sudden I realized the mirror was gone. It might be somebody pulling down the mirror, it fallen down. I don't think so, because what I saw was that which I previously conceptualized as a mirror was not a mirror, or at least that's what I wasn't experiencing that which I had a memory of experiencing just before, right? So if I have just looked at that car and experienced mirror, and then took, drove off the highway, I would be none the wiser. But there actually might have been a mirror. The second cognition, or the lack of cognition, might have been wrong, so there actually was a mirror. How the hell do I know this? How do I get to knowledge of this? Can I get to certainty? Maybe that's a better point to get across, right? No, I can't get to certainty. I can't get to a point where I say, there must be a fucking mirror there. What I can do is say, at this point in time, I'm experiencing mirror. At that point in time, I'm not experiencing mirror. At that point, I know mirror. At that point, I don't know mirror, right? So this kind of fetish for scientific certainty is one of the biggest fucking pipe dreams. And mind you, I am educated in science, right? I've worked in scientific fields basically since my youth, right? Since my teen years, basically, right? Since the late 80s, mid 80s actually, right? I'm basically soaked in scientific, work, right? Not as a academic scientist or anything like that, but I'm actually doing the scientific physical stuff, right? Which might even be better, because then you get a closer understanding of what the hell you're actually doing, right? I'm not sitting in Crete talking about science, but eating my feta cheese and my pickles, right? I'm actually out there doing something that is sort of science that should be turned into some kind of value for human beings, right? Okay.
But changed our view of what it was. Similar perhaps to mental illness, we could maybe medieval people and we today could agree on that a certain person had some kind of mental illness, but we would disagree about what it was, what was actually involved in having it. Maybe the medieval people would have ascribed it to demonic possession or something like that. And in the case of experience, we can all agree on how to explain experience, how to apply experience concepts. We can agree, both the illusionist and the realist can agree on when people are having experiences and what they're having experiences of and so on. We can all agree on when we're in pain. This is why punching me on the nose wouldn't help, because I would agree that what you produced there was a pain experience. It wasn't that I didn't think they were pain experiences and I didn't know what they were and you've shown me. No, it's that I have a different theory of what that pain experience is, of what's happening when you punch me on the nose. So And I don't think there's any disagreement between the illusionist and the realist on when experiences occur and what the experiences are experiences of, when they're experiences of pain, of pleasure, of seeing something red, of tasting so on, tasting coffee or whatever, and so on. So, to sum up, illusionists don't deny that we have experiences, they just propose a different view of what experiences are. Okay, but still, the realist is likely to follow that.
I mean, have you ever seen a more fluffy way of arguing for a objection to it? I mean, what? What was that? And it took him like 10 minutes to just mumble whatever, astronomy, what, demonic possession. What? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I'm trying to deconstruct it, but it's so long-winded, so my deconstruction gets so much stretched that I sort of lose contact with what he's trying to say. If he's actually trying to say something, which I'm throwing my hands up sometimes and say, I can't follow it, man, right? The datum objection. Oh.
That objection up, that denial objection up, with another objection there, what I've called the datum objection. We'll say something like this. Look, it's a datum that phenomenal consciousness exists. It's something that's just basically given to us. It's not a theory we have of these things. When people thought that the stars were holes in the spheres rotating around the Earth, that was a theory they had. When people thought that that vision involved rays emanating from our eyes and hitting the things we were seeing, that was a theory they had. In the case of phenomenal consciousness, it's not a theory that we're acquainted with these mental qualities. We are acquainted with them. It's the most basic things we know about ourselves. That we just attend to our own experiences, and we see and we find that we're immediately acquainted with these phenomenal qualities. There's no, it's not a theory. It's a datum. It's a basic starting point for any theory of consciousness.
Yes, you got it, mate. There it was. It's a basic starting point, right? What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, right? You open your eyes, right? Your ears are already open. They are, it's a good thing that you can hear if there's some kind of dinosaur walking around outside, right? And mind you, I think that, and I think it's actually been scientifically proven, or at least indicated, and it hasn't been disproven yet, right? That at night, men are very likely, much more likely, way more likely to wake up if there's just the slight sound of something outside the house or outside the hut or in the near vicinity. That just, a small breaking twig or a scraping or something, or a door moving or something that, and I know that for myself, sometimes I could wake up, what was that? It's like, and I know from past experience that the women I've been around, they sleep fast, right? They don't wake up from this. It's because those men who could, if women had this and they're going out to fight the tiger, they would be dead, right? So all the women who could do this, they are dead, right? So women can't do this. But the men who could wake up and alert each other and fight off the tiger, they would have an evolutionary advantage that they could hear these kinds of sounds, or they would wake up at least from these sounds. Women might hear them, obviously, right? No reason to, but they're not waking up from it, right? Okay, so where was I going with this? So qualia, the qualia has a function. It's completely ridiculous. You open your eyes when you wake up, and it's like you look at the sky and the weather, and you try to get a feel for what the hell is going on today, right? Is it cold? Is it hot? Do I need to take this clothes? And it's just qualia from dusk till dawn, basically, right? That's why qualia is the foundation, man, right? I actually want to go and start this one again. I want to listen again to this. And how he, if this is an objection, it is then it's my objection. Then I need to take this seriously, right?
Okay, but still, the realist is likely
extra seriously. Not that I'm not taking this seriously. Obviously, I am. I'm deconstructing every fucking sentence of it, right? But I'm not taking it seriously necessarily that I have to adopt all his philosophy. I am very picky, choosy about it, right? And I don't, you have to be a fucking good arguer, right? You have to be good at doing philosophy and present it in a way that, in order to convince me that I might need to do something about my own philosophy, right?
To follow that objection up, that denial objection up, with another objection there, what I've called the datum objection. We'll say something like this: look, it's a datum that phenomenal consciousness exists. It's something that's just basically given to us. It's not a theory we have of these things. When people thought that the stars were holes...
what I don't like is, why are you saying consciousness? Why are you not saying qualia? These terms are floating around in a bucket. And you're just, at this point you're using this term, then you're using that term, then you use another term. Stick to the fucking terms so I understand what you're talking about, right? Having an experience of red is not the same as being conscious of red, necessarily. Well, it depends on the definition of the words. Definitions you haven't presented, right? Okay, if you're saying phenomenal consciousness is the same as qualia, okay, so it's a datum that qualia exist. Okay, now existence is not qualia, in my opinion, right? Because the qualia is on your inside. So what you're talking about, existence, is something inside that is existing. Well, then there's existence everywhere, because I have sounds and colors and everywhere, right? So, I mean, be careful that you are very strict with your use of terms, right? Maybe my biggest quarrel with this is the terms are not well defined, and they're all over the place, and they're equated and equivocated and so on, right? It's just a bad presentation. It's like it's a stream of consciousness put into the PowerPoint show, right? It's just a stream. It's like I started thinking and I presented that, put it on the slides, right? It's not thought through. It's not double checked. It's not. There's not an editor who has looked it through. Apparently, say you have to be strict with your definitions and the terms you're using and so on, right? He's just cooked it up in his basement, some evening because Moscow Center for Consciousness Studies wanted him to, apparently, right? Or maybe he has forced himself upon them, or have a good friend over there in Russia, right? That says, hey, by the way, can I put my lecture series on your platform, right? Whatever, right? Nepotism or something. I don't know. Okay, let's go.
In the spheres rotating around the Earth, that was a theory they had. When people thought that that vision involved rays emanating from our eyes and hitting the things we were seeing, that was a theory they had.
Exactly.
In the case of phenomenal consciousness, it's not a theory that we're acquainted with these mental qualities. We are acquainted with them. It's the most basic things we know about ourselves.
Exactly.
We just attend to our own experiences, and we see, and we find that we're immediately acquainted with these phenomenal qualities.
Absolutely.
It's not a theory. It's a datum. It's a basic starting point for any theory of consciousness.
Yes.
So anyone who
a theory? No. Be careful. not a theory of consciousness, because you can't make it a theory, because theory are attempts at explaining why things have ended up the way they have ended up, right? A theory of what is going on, why our planets, seem to revolve around other planets or stars and whatever, right? Well, who the hell knows? But come up with an explanation. It's because of this, right? That's a theory. But you need to have those qualia experiences before you start making those theories, right? All the qualia and abstractions and so on, cognitions, they come before any theory. So theories are about that which you have experienced. So you can't turn it around and say, now I'm going to create a theory about experience. It doesn't work that way. Now, I like that he's saying, well, it's just given. I don't like the term necessarily given. It's like, the benevolent or evil demon, serving you stuff that you sort of ought to have an experience of. But, it's metaphysics can be a little difficult. The terms used, because they are not, the terms in general language are not there to do metaphysics, but to do physics, you could say, right? So it might be at times hard to find a suitable term to use for whatever you're trying to refer to, right? So I'll go light on that, right? But that just indicates that you need to be even more precise when you use terms to explain what exactly you mean by it, right? And also that's why, because you need to explain what you mean, at some point there needs to be a reduction base that all things connect to. Otherwise you're just throwing words around, right? And there has to be some ending point where, if you define this, okay, then you're using these terms. Well, how do you define those terms? Well, you define them with these other terms. But how do you define these other terms? At some point, you have to get down to some kind of reduction base, right? And what is more natural than selecting that which you can't explain as the reduction base, right? Which are the qualia. You can't explain yellow, right? How the hell would you explain yellow, right? You can't explain yellow. You can only say it's the same color as, right? A reference, a relative explanation. It's the same color as that lemon over there, right? Okay, that's the color, right? So, but in order to have the experience of yellow, you don't need to explain it, right? You don't need to explain yellow. You don't need to explain elephant, because it's there. It's a datum. I don't use the term datum, so I'm hesitating to start using that, right? It's also one of these things he does. He just lumps these sort of fancy terms in your face as if it's obvious to me that you should use this kind of term, I'm sort of a high-flying academic. If you don't understand, it's just because you're too stupid. So it's this kind of approach, right? He sounds so. It's sort of a pathetic way of sounding smart, right? No, but let's see the rest of it. Hopefully, I can get is phenomenally a datum part objection here finished before the 1 hour mark. Let's see.
Denies that claim, the claim that we're acquainted with the phenomenal properties, is just not even beginning to think about consciousness. They're thinking about something else. Now, here's a little quote from David Chalmers. The sense in which it is introspectively obvious that we feel pain is the phenomenal sense. So when you hit me on the nose and I attend to what's happening to me, I'm aware of the phenomenal quality of pain, directly aware of it, and that's undeniable. Strong illusionists about consciousness are committed to denying the central, apparently introspectively obvious data about consciousness. They're committed to denying the starting point for any theory of consciousness. Although that he does say apparently there, so maybe there's a little room for some debate. Okay, so what's the illusionist going to say about that? Well, they'll say something like this. They'll agree, first of all, that careful introspective reports are data. We want to have people's reports on their own experience. It's very important data for a theory of consciousness.
Reports are not data. Give me a fucking break. You can't be that ignorant. You can't be that stupid. Careful, attentive, introspective reports are data. How the hell do you... So, yeah, okay, there could be data that are not reports, but reports are apparently data. Unless I say that my qualia is the reduction base of philosophy, then it's not data or what? What do I do? If I experience red, I just say red. If you pass me on the street and I say red, and then you say, oh my God, that was a report. Keith Frankish, I'm Keith Frankish. I received a report of red. Fantastic, right? What are you going to do with it? I mean, what? I mean, we have to differentiate between cognitions and qualia, right? Cognitions is like elephant, right? The qualia are the colors, the sounds, and so on that eventually ended up in your mind cognizing elephant at that particular part of your experience, right? So the cognition elephant is not a qualia. So if you're reporting elephant, you're not talking about qualia, right? But my point would be then, well, you wouldn't be able to talk about elephant if you didn't have any qualia, right? There wouldn't be any colors, there wouldn't be any sound. If you're rejecting them, calling them illusions, you should sort of pretend that they're not there, right? Because they might just confuse you or something, right? They're useless. They can't be used for anything. They're illusions, right? But without any of them, there wouldn't be an experience of elephant. There wouldn't be a cognition of elephant. You wouldn't get access or understanding or whatever term you want to put on it of elephant if you didn't have these qualia in the first place, right? The qualia comes first, and then the cognitions are derived, you could say, from these qualia. So what are these reports? What are they entailing? Show me a fucking report, man, right? And data? What is data? Is it numbers? Is it, I mean, if I say red to you, right? Is that data? I don't know. It's a sound that is a reference to a particular kind of qualia, right? Is that data? I don't know. Is that data? What the hell are you talking about, man? It's so fucking lazy, this, right? Just careful, attentive, introspective reports are data. And it also it's sort of constructed a very high Licks number. It's careful, attentive, introspective reports, right? It's not something that is supposed to be easy to understand. I'm not saying this and now they have to be very low level understanding, anything like that. But it seems at every point where he can, raise the complexity of his statements, he does that in order to sound like he's smart. And merely just covering up that he might not actually know fuck shit about what he's talking about, right?
To know how people are disposed to describe it when they are attending carefully to what's happening to them. That's data. However, these reports aren't guaranteed to be accurate. If they report that they're acquainted with some private mental quality, that's an interesting fact about them. There's something about what's happening to them.
What reference, what are you referring to? What are you comparing to? In order to get to accuracy, who is that perfect person who can say, hey, I know what's there. You're wrong. If you're not experiencing this, you're incorrect because I'm perfect. My experiences are perfect, and if there's discrepancy, it's your fault. You're wrong. What kind of angel being, perfect being, is going to make that comparison and justify accuracy, right? Where does that reference come from? Right? Well, where does it come from, man? Right? It isn't there. It's always some being, some human being saying, I think this is the case. And there's apparently somebody in his mind, there's some person who is able to say, this is what is there. And it's accurate if you identify the same thing or whatever, right? Cognize or have an introspective report of the same kind. Then it's accurate. And if not, it's inaccurate because I'm right. So between the lines, he is actually appealing to authority, right? He's an authoritarian. He knows somebody who knows what is right. Right? Apparently. It's between the lines. You have to always read between the lines here, right? They're not saying it outright because they think they're very scientific and so on. No. This is authoritarian, right? This is just straight up authoritarianism.
That makes them inclined to make that...
It's the trust the science idiots, right? From the COVID scam.
Report. But it doesn't guarantee that the report is accurate, that they've got we're assuming, of course, that they're giving a completely sincere and careful report, but it's still not guaranteed to be accurate. It's what seems to them.
So if you're not reporting, you're not making a proposition of any kind. This is in the broadest sense of the term, but somebody reports. So your thinking without reporting is more accurate or precise according to some higher standard than that person who might be reporting incorrectly or what. You see how many stupid, spheres of potential whatever bullshit. I lack words in order to describe this in the way I sense it or feel it or understand it, right? He's creating all sorts of fluff around. It's like it's a shell game, right? He's confusing you with smoke and mirrors or something like that. So you sort of lose, bearing on what the hell we're doing, right? And you're left sitting there, I guess there's something to what he says. I can't refute it. So it's science. So I better accept it. It's something like that, right? Don't be very fucking careful with these kind of people, right?
Them to be happening, but maybe it's not what is actually happening. Reports, introspective reports, need interpretation in the light of theory.
Again, it's so annoying. But if I'm sitting on a deserted island, I'm not reporting whatever to the crab over there, right? Or the coconut over there, whatever. I'm not reporting anything. But I still need to get around using my qualia, right? Need to find some food. I need to find a shelter. I need to find a place to dump my morning dump, right? I need to do stuff, right? I need to get shit done, right? I can't sit around waiting for somebody to listening to my report, right? So I need to be able to do things on my own accord without all sorts of stuff that you find necessary in your sort of everyday academic ivory tower where you go about reporting all day long, right? As if that's a natural setting that is always there. No, it isn't. And you should be able to philosophize all on your own without anybody else there to report, right? Because that would also be a contradiction. Because then they had thought that out without reporting anything. And then they're reporting it. Well, then they did some philosophy they're reporting on. So why can't you do that philosophy without accepting the report, right? All this bullshit is beyond my wildest dreams that a guy like this can actually sit down in full seriousness spouting this shit, right? It's incredible.
And they can be corrected in the light of theory. But compare perceptual reports. Reports that people make about things they've seen and heard and so on, which again might be thought of as data for science. Scientists go out to make observations, either with their unaided senses or with instruments or whatever.
So I can't go down and buy a jar of pickles without a scientist and doing some reporting. I mean... Oh my fucking God, man. I mean, he's disconnected from everything that he does in his real life. If he has a real life. I mean, what the hell, man, right? Oh, bring in the scientists. I need to go to the grocery store. Yeah, my reports are there. Oh my fucking God. Oh my God, man. This is crazy, man.
And then they use these as the basis for constructing theories, right? And these perceptual reports, these observational reports, they're the data from which they start, right? and we don't question those. Well, no, that's not how it works, because observation itself is theory-laden. How we see the world is informed by our prior beliefs and expectations. We're not neutral observers. What we see depends to some extent on what we expect to see.
What?
And we can see
Whoa. So if I'm experiencing Keith Frankish now, or the color of Keith, right? Is that because I expect there to be a Keith, or what? What? I don't expect anything. I'm just receiving, right? And I trust that it will make some kind of sense. And if it doesn't make sense, well, I'm not blaming myself that you shouldn't be making sense of this. What, I mean, does he really understand what he's saying? Or what the words he says is related to some other understanding that I'm not a part of, right? So when he says something, I have a different understanding of it, right? So it makes no sense to me, or very little sense, right? Observation is theory-laden? What do you mean? If I go outside, will I expect whatever I experience if I go outside my house right now? Is that not because I expect to experience that, or to what degree is that expectation a part of my experience? How the hell do you get to that, right? If I could do that, I would want there to be, big-breasted ladies as far as the eye can see who would be, willing to do whatever and make a blonde billionaire with a liquor store and, what... Who's an nymphomaniac, right? I mean, it's like, no, that's not how it works, man. Oh my God. This is funny, man, right? Okay, we will keep the next bit to the next part. I mean, is this... Oh my God, what an idiot, man. Oh, man, okay. Share, like, and subscribe, and, consider joining the board. Link below, and, give me a comment. What do you think of this shit, right? And otherwise, have a nice day. See you next time.